Chapter 318, Half Human Half Monster 5. I guess you couldn't find Guardian Zhang. No, that old man Mun no? At Li Guang's words, the complexion of Holy Fire Priestess, who had been keeping her mouth firmly shut, darkened. Seeing her reaction, Li Guang's eyes sparkled. As expected. Finally, there's a reaction. It's a lie. You're just trying to test me with some scheme, aren't you? The Holy Fire Priestess opened her mouth without meeting his eyes. Then Li Guang snorted and said, "A scheme? What would we gain by scheming with such a thing? Even with the power of the Holy Fire." She didn't finish her sentence. At her words, Li Guang let out a hollow laugh and said, "So it was true. Even with the power of that great Holy Fire, you couldn't find that old man Mun no? Or have you really lost the power of prophecy?" At those words, the Holy Fire Priestess trembled her cheeks without giving any answer. Seeing this reaction, Li Guang furrowed his brows with an intrigued gaze. "Don't tell me, that rumor was really true?" Li Guang spoke as if surprised. Although most of the high-ranking members didn't know, he had been assigned to deal with the Fire Faith Order before, so he knew well where her power originated from. Holy Fire. It was a sacred orb called the Holy Fire. She seemed to receive prophecies or revelations through that orb. Therefore he knew that if it fell from her hands she would no longer receive prophecies or revelations. But this was unexpected news. The orb might not be the problem. Was that person's prediction true? If that's the case, this old woman would have no value whatsoever. Of course, since she was the spiritual pillar of the Fire Faith Order and the leader who guided the believers along with the sect master, she could be used in a different way. But there was absolutely no need for them to make such sacrifices. Well, you're quite something. Even though you really lost that power, you kept it hidden until now. Nonsense. The power of the Holy Fire is not as simple as you think. Don't beat around the bush. Then prove that you haven't lost your power. It's a good thing. You don't even need to report it to that person. Just tell me, where is the orb? You need the orb to find what that old man Mun no stole, don't you? Even if it's not us, the Fire Faith Order will also try to find it. You're going to keep your mouth shut until the end? Fine. Smack. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Guang pushed his palms towards the ground. Then his body floated up and flew towards Holy Fire Priestess. Even though the muscles and tendons in his lower body had not yet recovered, he was still a pinnacle stage expert of the transformation realm who had surpassed the wall. And thanks to the demonic energy of the Amugi, his close-range movement was completely free. Gasp. The Holy Fire Priestess was startled and tried to dodge him. His appearance, with his entire skin transformed like a snake's scales, was closer to a monster than a human, so she couldn't help but be terrified. Whoosh 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 smack. But Li Guang, who had hit the ground with his palms a few times, grabbed her in an instant. Thud. Fush. Ah. Li Guang straddled Holy Fire Priestess's back as she fell to the ground, grabbed her neck and said, "Grip. I'll make you confess directly before taking you to that person. I'll let go. If I were to let you go easily, why would I do this? Now I'm going to break your fingers one by one. Of course, that's just the beginning. Once I'm done breaking your fingers, I'll pull out your nails one by one. And if you still keep your mouth shut, I'll cut off your fingers one by one." Nash. At Li Guang's threat, the Holy Fire Priestess gritted her teeth. It was scary and terrifying, but she was someone who had kept her mouth shut until the end despite the torture and threats at the Imperial Palace. Even if the torture Li Guang was about to inflict was more severe than that, she had no intention of yielding. What the hell is going on? Sip Chun couldn't understand this situation at all. He didn't know the identities of these people, so why was his lord suddenly cooperating with them? The Holy Fire Priestess was an important person the society leader had told him to bring. He couldn't just leave her to get hurt. So Sip Chun tried to step in. "Yo Dash. Just leave it be for now." But he had to stop due to Mok Jiongun's telepathic message. Sip Chun looked at Mok Jiongun in puzzlement, turning his head to ask for the reason, but shudder. The moment he saw Mok Jiongun's face, he couldn't say a word. He had never seen such a cold expression without a hint of a smile. Then, crack. Ah. Along with the sound of fingers being broken, a scream burst from Holy Fire Priestess's mouth. "Speak. Ugh. Where is the orb? Ugh." The Holy Fire Priestess groaned and then bit her lip hard. Seeing her reaction, Li Guang snorted and then bent her middle finger backward. Crack. The finger was completely bent backward and broken. Seeing this, Li Guang grinned and asked again, "Where is the orb?" Crack. Ugh. Another one of her fingers was broken again. Unlike before, Holy Fire Priestess bit her lip so hard that blood flowed from it, enduring the pain. Seeing the remarkable endurance of the old woman, Li Guang clicked his tongue and said, "You're quite something, but do you think you can keep enduring? Fine. Let's see who wins. This time I'll break 2 fingers at a time." Before he could even finish his sentence, Jiangyan, Jiangyan, Holy Fire Priestess who had been enduring the pain, called out to mock Jiangyan. At her cry, Li Guang couldn't hide his puzzlement. Was she referring to the sickle-slaying demon as mock Jiangyan? Jiangyan, help me. The Holy Fire Priestess rolled her eyes and asked for help from mock Jiangyan, who was just watching her. He was a disciple of the Shadow Clan Master of the Fire Faith Order, so he was a believer of the Fire Faith Order. Naturally, he had the duty to protect her, the Holy Fire Priestess. But why wasn't he responding to her call? It was strange enough already. She couldn't understand why mock Jiangyan, who was supposed to protect her, was just watching as this man threatened and intimidated her. She thought he might have some plan, but now it seemed that wasn't the case either. So she shouted, "Believer Jiangyan." She had kept their relationship hidden for the sake of each other's safety, as the members of the Heaven and Earth Society with mock Jiangyan seemed unaware of their identities. But if he was trying to betray her for some unknown reason, there was no reason to do so. "Believer Jiangyan?" At those words, Li Guang, who was straddling Holy Fire Priestess's back and pressing down on her neck, furrowed his brows and turned his head to look at mock Jiangyan. "What the hell is this about? Believer Jiangyan?" To that question mock Jiangyan shrugged. Then he casually said, "I told a little lie to bring her along obediently when I took her out of the underground prison, so she has been regarding me as a fellow Fire Faith Order member all along." "Oh ho. I see. No wonder this stubborn old woman followed you meekly without being restrained. It seems strange to me. What the hell?" The Holy Fire Priestess was dumbfounded. If she were to die here or be captured by their organization, the rebuilding of the Fire Faith Order would become even more impossible. But that bastard mock Jiangyan was just watching saying such things. Was it really a lie? But how did he know about the existence of the Shadow Clan Master? Then did he also betray the Shadow Clan Master? Her mind became confused and all sorts of thoughts came to her. Then, grip. Thud. Fush. Li Guang turned her raised face to the side and slammed it into the ground. Then he whispered in her ear, "Too bad. Old woman. You must have had some hope, but... Ugh. Just give up now. You're too old to suffer like this. Don't you want to live out the rest of your life in peace?" Truly stubborn. According to the prophecy, aren't you nothing but the root of evil that the Fire Faith Order must eliminate? But why did that old man Munno hide it without your knowledge? No matter how much I think about it, I don't understand. Squish. Li Guang pressed the Holy Fire Priestess's face even harder. Then she shouted in a pained voice, "I don't know. I know nothing." Still making excuses until the end. Either you told that old man to hide it or that old man betrayed you in the Fire Faith Order and hid it. It has to be one of the two, so why are you trying so hard to keep it a secret? Squish. Tremble, tremble, tremble. As Li Guang pressed her face even harder, the Holy Fire Priestess trembled and spoke with difficulty. "Like the prophecy? Your leader is supposed to be an omniscient and omnipotent being, so why is he afraid of the prophecy?" Crack. Ah. Before she could even finish her sentence, Li Guang broke all her remaining fingers. Then Li Guang spoke with an angry face. "That person is not someone you can judge recklessly. That person fears nothing." Ah, Keikuk Hikik. He suddenly started laughing like a madwoman. At her sudden, insane laughter, Li Guang frowned. Regardless, she continued to laugh and then opened her mouth. "Do you really think your leader is obsessed with it because he has no fear? What? You wench really? No matter how great your leader is, in the end he's just a parasite in a human body." Bam. Before she could finish her sentence, Li Guang slammed her face into the ground. He slammed it so hard that the rainwater pooled on the ground gradually turned red with blood. She seemed to have lost half her mind from the pain, her eyes unfocused. To her, Li Guang whispered in a voice filled with anger. If you don't want to follow that old man Mun, don't you dare. Swoosh. What? Li Guang's expression soon hardened. An immense murderous intent was engulfing the surroundings, making him feel like he was about to lose consciousness. Thud. Thud. The masked individuals nearby collapsed to the ground, convulsing. It was no different for his allies. Ha, my low lord. Siep Chun also staggered back, gasping for breath from the unimaginable murderous intent. Murderous intent is said to be the materialized energy of murderous will. The murderous will engulfing the surroundings made everyone feel death while alive. That wasn't it, earlier? Li Guang's eyes shook like crazy. If there was a god of death, could they emit such murderous intent? Right at that moment. Roar. Li Guang's body, which had been straddling the holy fire priestess's back, gradually floated into the air. Li Guang tried to resist by raising the demonic energy within his body, but it was meaningless from the start. His body was slowly being pulled towards the center of the storm of murderous intent. It was right in front of Mok Jiangun. In Li Guang's crazily trembling eyes, Mok Jiangun was not the being he had been looking at until just now. Shudder. Covered in black demonic energy and murderous intent, his appearance was the embodiment of fear, dread, and death itself. Seeing that, Li Guang, who was terrified for the first time in his life, stuttered and opened his mouth. Why are you doing this? He was very, very close. A sickle-slaying demon, I don't know why you're doing this, but first calm down. If there's some misunderstanding. The person who killed Mun No. What? That's the person I was looking for. Chapter 319. Fragments of Truth. 1. Crumble. Crumble. The walls of the residence building cracked and even the roof tiles began to shatter. Ma Arehyun's heart, standing on the roof tiles, pounded heavily. Despite the considerable distance, the waves of murderous intent spreading in all directions made one feel death even while alive. This was the first time he had seen a mere human's murderous intent cause such an uproar. Amit Ba. I thought the owner's heart was filled with demons, but he wasn't just filled with them, he was a demon himself. The excommunicated monk Jia Jiamzhong, who had his arms crossed under the roof, chanted a Buddhist prayer for the first time in a long while, fiddling with his broken prayer beads. Magui. In Buddhist scriptures, demons themselves are referred to by various terms. One of them is Magui, also known as the demon army, the heavenly demon, and the demon of the Son of Heaven. Jia Jiamzhong, who had mastered the incomparable great power, could sense the energy of the great nature. Even the energy of the great nature is in turmoil. Everything that existed feared that murderous intent. Just how enraged must one be to emit this level of murderous intent? Jia Jiamzhong looked at Mok Jiangun. His appearance, shrouded in the emanating demonic energy, was the embodiment of a demon. Roar. What the hell is he? Li Guang, held in the air by Mok Jiangun's true energy, had an expression of fear for the first time in his life. Even when he first bowed to that person, he had never been this terrified. He was merely overwhelmed by the pressure, but now his heart was pounding so hard that it was difficult to even meet his eyes. Why is he doing this? Despite his fear, Li Guang was perplexed. Why, of all people, was the one he was looking for that old man Mun No? As far as he knew, that old man had no blood relatives or anything, so he couldn't understand. So Li Guang barely suppressed this sense of terror and parted his lips. And for the first time in his life he felt fear from this tremendous murderous intent and evil-stained nature. There must be some misunderstanding. Swish. At that moment Mok Jiangun lightly raised his hand. Then he slightly tilted his hand to the right. Crack. As soon as he did that, Li Guang's right arm was forcibly raised and then torn off to the right. Arg. Even though his recently reattached arm was torn off again, the pain was beyond imagination. Blood gushed out like a fountain and Li Guang gasped roughly. Thanks to the regenerative ability of the demonic energy, the torn part was quickly healing, but it was still agonizing to have a perfectly fine arm ripped off. Damn it. It hurts. It hurts so much. Ugh. It hurt even more than when it was cut off. He wanted to die rather than endure this. As he was suffering, Li Guang unconsciously raised his head and made eye contact with Mok Jiangun. just from meeting his eyes at that moment. Swish, 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 swish. He was engulfed in the illusion of his entire body being shredded by a sword. And it wasn't just for a moment. Like a piece of meat tied up in a slaughterhouse, he was unable to move an inch and was continuously and relentlessly slashed, and it felt like there was no end to it. It felt like it was going on for a whole day, no, even for several days. Slash. Slash. What the hell is this? Seop Chun, who had stepped back due to the murderous intent, couldn't hide his astonishment at the bizarre sight. Li Guang was convulsing and his entire body was being slashed on its own, blood flowing down. It was so strange that it was eerie without even feeling any sword energy. Ha! Then Li Guang roughly exhaled and arched his back and black blood poured out of his mouth. As he spat out so much black blood that it was like vomiting, Li Guang's eyes shook like crazy. What was that just now? It felt like he had been slashed for days, but when he came to his senses, it was only a moment. He thought it was just an illusion, but his whole body was covered in blood, and even his internal organs seemed to be in a wretched state. Ugh. It hurt too much. It was so painful that he even thought he wanted to die. So Li Guang spoke as if pleading. Please just stop. It would be troublesome if you're tired out by just this much. We're just getting started. Swish. This time Mok Jeong-un slightly tilted his hand to the left. Crack. As soon as he did that, Li Guang's left arm was raised and then pulled to the left, eventually being torn off. Arg. The blood vessels in Li Guang's white eyes burst and his eyes turned red. He was even shedding bloody tears. It was more agonizing because his body was recovering due to the demonic energy inside him, making it difficult for him to die easily. Mok Jeong-un knew this, so he was inflicting pain on him without using demonic energy or the energy of death. To him who was suffering like that, Mok Jeong-un said, "Why did you do it?" I'm asking why you killed Mun No. I. Stab. Ku. Mok Jeong-un's hand pierced into his hesitating abdomen. Easily penetrating even the hard scales, Mok Jeong-un grabbed his internal organs with his hand. Arg. It was already agonizing to have external wounds, but when he directly inflicted pain on his internal organs, Li Guang trembled his body as if he would faint at any moment. Even his only remaining lower garment was being stained by the fluid and blood oozing out. I have to die. As if he couldn't take it anymore, Li Guang made an extreme decision. Although he couldn't move his body, he could still circulate his internal energy, so he decided to induce death by making it go out of control. So he tried to raise his energy, but... Grip. Ugh. At that moment, Mok Jeong-un's hand that had pierced his abdomen was now heading towards his danjian. As Mok Jeong-un's hand touched his danjian, sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The gathered internal energy scattered as if corroded by a strange energy. The scattered energy escaped his control and seeped out of his body through his skin like a haze. Ugh. As the energy drained out, the scales on his skin gradually lost their color. Then the pain he had been feeling so far gradually doubled. Just moving the hand stuck in his abdomen a little made him want to die from the excruciating pain. Arg, please. Please just kill me. How could I do that? Kill me. Seeing him suffering, Mok Jeong-un grinned with a smile so eerie that the corners of his mouth reached his ears. The moment he saw that, Li Guang felt like he would go crazy. This bastard was enjoying this situation. His pleas for death only continued to amuse this bastard. Even if he wanted to forcibly endure it, his will to do so had long been broken since the moment he was gripped by fear. Enduring it was out of the question in this situation. Ugh. You don't have to answer my questions at all. Just keep suffering like that. This was sincere. Mok Jeong-un intended to give him pain worse than hell, and he planned to sustain it, not just end it briefly. He hadn't been searching for him just to end it with a single instance. Then Li Guang mustered all his remaining strength to say something. What kind of relationship do you have with Mun to do this to me? Right. Yeah. You should know that. Mok Jeong-un turned his head and smiled at Seop Chun, saying, Seop Chun, could you go over there for a moment? Yes, I understand. Whoosh. At Mok Jeong-un's command, Seop Chun, who had been watching with a pale complexion, immediately launched his body towards the residence building. As he left, Mok Jeong-un turned his head back and said, That's right. You should know the reason why you have to suffer. He's my grandfather. At those words, Li Guang's eyes widened. He doubted his own ears right now. Munno was his grandfather? What does that mean? It's exactly as you heard. Munno is my grandfather. That can't be. Munno has no blood relatives. Huh. The image of a burning house flashed through Li Guang's mind. He thought that crazy old man medicine immortal He Yang had noticed their approach and burned down the house to erase the traces of his living there and escape. But that wasn't the case. Burning down the house wasn't to erase the traces of him living there. It was to hide this bastard. To conceal the existence that was with him, he burned down the house. Wait, then how did he know the demon sword technique of the first realm? Smack. Arg. At that moment, Mok Jiangun grabbed his intestines. Li Guang screamed in pain and suffered. To him, Mok Jiangun said, "There's no need to be so surprised that we're not blood-related. You seem to know something. Is that why you killed my grandfather? Please just let go of this. Ugh. Does it hurt? Bear with it. You'll get used to it soon." What the hell was this crazy bastard saying about getting used to it while grabbing his internal organs? Was this bastard truly a demon? Li Guang's trembling eyes wavered. Evil. In Li Guang's trembling eyes, Mok Jiangun's appearance, exuding demonic energy, was the embodiment of a demon. Seeing that, Li Guang was dumbfounded. The prophecy that old woman Holy Fire Priestess had made. The original text of that prophecy came to mind. "Beware, for the incarnation of Ahriman who will taint the sacred flame with black evil, shall appear in this world." That person had said that the prophecy would be about a being that doesn't exist in this world, an otherworldly being. It was a being different from spiritual creatures or demons and spirits, so it was an evil that had to be eliminated. In fact, everyone, including himself, naturally believed it to be an otherworldly being. But it seemed they had misunderstood. How could this be? To think they failed to recognize it even when it was so close to them. This monstrous talent who hadn't learned martial arts, was too late to learn it at the age of 17, and reached the level of a great sage in less than half a year. This was not something an ordinary human could achieve. Huh. Li Guang raised his head and stared intently at Mok Jiangun. Guardian Zhang of the Fire Faith Order. The existence that old man Munno medicine immortal He Yang had tried to hide with all his might. It was none other than... It was you. What are you talking about now? You were the incarnation of Ahriman in the prophecy. Chapter 320 Fragments of Truth, 2. You were the incarnation of Ahriman in the prophecy. The incarnation of Ahriman? The moment Mok Jiangun heard those words from him, he recalled the passage from Persian that the leader of Shadow Clan Master Huan Yixian had along with the scripture. It clearly stated, "Beware, for the incarnation of Ahriman shall appear in this world." Are you referring to that now? You. Li Guang's eyes widened at Mok Jiangun's words. How does this bastard know about that prophecy? Only a tiny minority within the organization were aware of it, and as far as he knew, only those at the level of bishop or above in the Fire Faith Order, including Holy Fire Priestess, were privy to this information. But this bastard wasn't from Fire Faith Order. What the hell is going on? Where did you hear that from, you bastard? In response to his question, Mok Jiangun scoffed and said, "You seem to be misunderstanding something." "What?" "Only I get to ask the questions here." Swish. With those words, Mok Jiangun clenched his left fist and made a pulling motion. Instantly, the flesh on Li Guang's left thigh began tearing as if it would be ripped off at any moment. Quiek. Crunch. Li Guang gritted his teeth trying to endure it. However, even after experiencing the agony of having both arms torn off, this pain was still unbearable. Rip rip rip. Arg. A scream bordering on a howl erupted from Li Guang's mouth. His left leg had finally been ripped off. All that remained of him was his right leg, torso and head. Li Guang, whose body was no longer fit for living, groaned in agony, drool mixed with blood dripping down his chin. Lifting his chin, Mok Jiangun said, "Shall we continue our conversation? Why did you call me the incarnation of Ahriman? I thought that was a prophecy and directive of Fire Faith Order." "Ku. Your answer is late. Then to give you more motivation. The sacred flame shall be tainted by black evil. Beware the incarnation of Ahriman who will appear in this world." Taint the sacred flame with black evil? Mok Jiangun tilted his head in confusion. The prophecy was different from what he had seen. No, to be more precise, the passage he had seen only contained the latter part. Finding this strange, Mok Jiangun asked, "Who did you hear those words from just now?" At that question, Li Guang strained to turn his eyes and looked at someone. That someone was Holy Fire Priestess, who lay face down on the ground, unconscious and unmoving. Seeing this, Mok Jiangun's eyes narrowed. As expected, the Holy Fire Priestess was somehow connected to this organization. Although they were currently on hostile terms, they may have had a friendly relationship in the past. Ha ha ha. Despite his life force surpassing that of a human due to demonic power, Li Guang's condition was not good, likely because a significant portion of the energy in his danjian had been dispersed and he had suffered severe blood loss. His complexion had turned a pale purple, and he looked as if he could die at any moment. Mok Jiangun placed his hand near the danjian on the abdomen he had pierced. Herc. Li Guang's half-closed eyes snapped wide open. Thanks to the energy flowing in through Mok Jiangun's hand, he had regained consciousness. What in the world? Li Guang was baffled. The energy that had entered through Mok Jiangun's hand was not internal energy, but resembled the energy that had flowed from the black sword that had almost become one with him. This energy was demonic power. Mok Jiangun had injected a tiny portion of the unrefined demonic power he had received from the golden nine-tailed fox. Damn it! Li Guang inwardly cursed. If he had been left alone a bit longer he might have naturally died, but thanks to the bastard injecting energy into him, the bleeding had stopped and he had regained consciousness. Even if I want to die, I can't. It was truly ironic. Who would have thought there would come a moment when the desire to die would surpass the will to live? Seeing him lamenting his return to consciousness, Mok Jiangun said, "It seems you're in a condition to live now. Then let's continue our conversation. What is this incarnation of Ahriman? And why do you think it's me? Because if not you, then who else could be the incarnation of Ahriman? An interesting notion." Ha! Li Guang scoffed incredulously at Mok Jiangun's words. What he was talking about wasn't simply a matter of limits or willpower. Even if one had a different constitution from others or possessed innate martial talent, these were things difficult for a human to achieve. This bastard completely surpassed human standards. There was a reason that person referred to him as a being beyond human. You don't realize how dangerous you are. Dangerous. Grip. Mok Jiangun tightly clutched Li Guang's chin. Then in a low voice he said, "None of that matters. What's important is who you killed. You bastard. I heard that leaving a mark is a warning to the organization, so why did you kill him? It seems Ghost Blade only warned my grandfather and left, so why did you go against that and kill him?" Tremble. Tremble. With each word uttered, the murderous intent squeezing down made Li Guang feel as if his heart would burst. How could mere killing intent exude such overwhelming pressure and even make him feel threatened? If it were ordinary people and not him, they might have died from the killing intent alone, unable to endure it. No answer, I see. I don't mind if you keep your mouth shut all day. The longer you stay silent, the more time I have to torment you, a day, no, a month, even a year. A chilling smile lifted the corners of his mouth as he spoke. Seeing Mok Jiangun's face, Li Guang couldn't bear it anymore. This bastard's malice seemed like he would really do it. His resolve weakening, Li Guang pleaded. Please. Please just kill me. You want to die? Please. Begging now? You're really tugging at my heartstrings. Damn this guy. Contrary to his words, the murderous intent hadn't lessened one bit. While emitting such intense killing intent, he was still trying to torment him further, making Li Guang sick of it. Do you want to die a little more comfortably? Then tell me everything. Give me a convincing reason why I should kill you quickly. It would have been better if he had a mental restriction implanted in his head like the others. Even the deputy leaders of the Second Realm mostly had mental restrictions. But thanks to the merits of his predecessors, he was the only one without such a restriction, so he couldn't even induce his own death. As he hesitated, Mok Jiangun whispered, "It seems you can still endure it. Then perhaps it wouldn't be bad to experience how it feels to have your internal organs sliced one by one." Swish. Mok Jiangun gently unleashed his aura through the hand embedded in Li Guang's abdomen. Kirk. As the sharp energy spread to his internal organs, Li Guang's expression contorted in agony. It was a completely different sensation from having his guts grabbed. Quack. It felt as if hundreds of shattered blades were slicing and stabbing each and every organ, so painful that he vomited and tears streamed down his face. What a nice look. Since you're enduring well, let's take it further. Mok Jae-eun tried to intensify his aura. Li Guang's eyes shook like a madman. He had tried to stubbornly endure it out of loyalty to that person, but his resolve crumbled. Li Guang hastily cried out. It wasn't really me who killed Mun No. At that outburst, Mok Jae-eun, who was about to increase the intensity of his aura, paused and looked at Li Guang's face. Li Guang's eyes, glistening with tears of blood from the pain, showed no wavering. Mok Jae-eun made an expression of incomprehension. What are you saying now? Clearly I merely contributed to Mun No's demise. Merely contributed? In response to Mok Jae-eun's question, Li Guang began to speak, his eyes lost in reminiscence. What do you mean by that? Exactly as I said. If the First Realm Ghost Blade returns empty-handed after encountering Medicine Immortal He Yang, you Li Guang shall discreetly take over the mission. Why is that? Ghost Blade prioritizes his agreement with the Heaven and Earth Society leader over that person's orders. If that's the case, rather than Ghost Blade. No. Ghost Blade will carry out the mission. Then, the Heaven and Earth Society leader. No, my apologies. Li Guang shook his head resolutely. The Heaven and Earth Society leader was not someone he could do anything about. Even that person was merely observing without action. Rather than indulging in pointless pride, he should simply follow the given orders and protect the Heaven and Earth Society leader's safety. Smoke. Sensing something off about the smoke rising from the middle of the mountain, Li Guang hurriedly headed in that direction. He had been waiting and watching from afar for Ghost Blade to completely withdraw. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. He spotted Ghost Blade urgently heading somewhere using his internal skills. It seemed more like he was chasing something rather than fleeing. What's going on? Though puzzled, this was his chance either way. Had Ghost Blade managed to find out something or capture him? Or had he acted as they feared? Upon arriving, Li Guang discovered a burning house and an old man barely standing in a vegetable garden not far away, swaying unsteadily. It was none other than Medicine Immortal He Yang Mun No. As feared. As expected, Ghost Blade had neither captured nor killed Mun No. What was he scheming? As he pondered this, Li Guang furrowed his brow. Judging by the traces of multiple confrontations around Mun No, he had assumed Ghost Blade had fought him, but something was odd. If he had faced off against Ghost Blade, a master of the sword, there should have been sword marks left behind, but there were no such traces, only remnants of palm techniques and poison arts. Finding this strange, Li Guang approached Mun No, who was barely keeping himself upright. Mun No seemed to be in a terrible state, likely due to severe injuries. Guardian Zhang. No, Mun No. Li Guang. Spotting him, Mun No couldn't hide his surprise. It seemed he hadn't anticipated a follow-up team being sent in addition to Ghost Blade. Li Guang drew closer and spoke. I thought you had fought Ghost Blade, but looking around it seems you fought someone else. Is that so? There were no sword marks anywhere, no matter how he looked at it. If not Ghost Blade, then who had Mun No fought here? As he puzzled over this, Mun No uttered incomprehensible words. If you don't want to be infected with the formless poison, it's best not to come close. Formless poison? Chapter 321. Fragments of Truth 3. If you don't want to be infected with the formless poison, it's best not to come close. Formless poison? At Medicine Immortal He Yang Mun No's warning, Li Guang stopped in his tracks. Even those unfamiliar with poisons have likely heard of one notorious poison at least once. That was none other than the formless poison. The formless poison, as the name suggests, is a poison without form, colorless, odorless, and tasteless, making it impossible to detect any distinguishing features, thus earning it the title of the King of Poisons. The more potent a poison, the fewer characteristics it possesses, so one may not even realize they have been poisoned until it's too late. And the formless poison is the pinnacle of such poisons. Formless poison? What do you mean by that? Li Guang asked, puzzled. After all, the only one known as the formless poison throughout the Central Plains was the Emperor's primal poison, also called the ultimate poison of the Sichuan Tang clan. The Emperor's primal poison was created by Tang Haiyang I, the patriarch considered as the founder of the Tang clan. As the king of poisons who had reached the realm of the 10,000 poisons body, his poison crafting techniques were unparalleled and innate. On his deathbed, he had condensed all the poison energy he had accumulated throughout his life to create this emperor's primal poison. This poison, called perfection itself, was a legendary poison that even the Tang clan's generations of poison masters could not analyze or recreate, no matter how hard they tried. Nowadays, only a tiny amount of this poison remains, and the people of the Central Plains refer to it as the formless poison. Due to its extremely dangerous nature, it has been designated as an absolute taboo through the righteous sect's Great Assembly. Surely you're not talking about the formless poison, you know? Fuff. Is there any other formless poison? What is this nonsense? Then does that mean medicine immortal He Yang Munno has been poisoned by the formless poison? In a brief moment, several assumptions formed in Li Guang's mind. However, among those assumptions, one that was particularly incomprehensible was that Ghost Blade couldn't possibly use poison techniques. That can't be. Ghost Blade takes immense pride in his own swordsmanship. Thus he would never use any weapon or martial art other than his sword. Li Guang's gaze turned to the traces around him. He had found it strange that there were no sword marks at all. This meant he didn't fight Ghost Blade. These were traces of a fight with someone else. Then why did Ghost Blade hurriedly leave this place? Unusually for him, he had rushed away without even surveying his surroundings as if being chased. No, that's not it. He wasn't being chased but trying to chase someone? That's right. That's it. Ghost Blade had hastened as if pursuing someone's tracks. The one he was chasing was none other than the person who had gravely injured medicine immortal He Yang Munno to the point where he could barely stand. Having confirmed all the circumstances, Li Guang spoke as if finding it ironic. Munno. Who exactly did you fight? Despite his question, medicine immortal He Yang Munno gave no answer. Instead, he was silently regulating his breathing. With each exhale, beads of sweat trickled down, and faint wisps of haze rose above his shoulders. Puff. Cough cough. He looked to be in immense difficulty. The Munno known to the world, along with medicine king Hua Tuo, was said to possess the greatest medicinal knowledge and medical expertise of the era, earning him the title of medicine immortal. However, his hidden side was that of a supreme master who had reached a level of poison arts on par with the renowned poison clans, the Tang clan, the Guyong clan and the Baek clan. His prowess was such that he had even defeated the First Realm's Ghost Blade in the past. Who could have appeared and defeated him? The haze escaping from his body. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed to be dispelling the poison energy. Two names came to Li Guang's mind. Guyong Sao, the clan leader of the Guyong clan who had reached the pinnacle of poison arts, known as the 8 Poison Snake Staff, and Tang Inhe, the clan leader of the Sichuan Tang clan, one of the 7 great clans, known as the 1,000 Poison Hand. If that really is the formless poison, then the one who fought him was a master of the Sichuan Tang clan. And that person even had the authority to boldly use the formless poison, which the righteous martial world had designated as an absolute taboo. In the Sichuan Tang clan, the one capable of such a thing was the 1,000 Poison Hand. Li Guang couldn't help but feel doubtful. Although he couldn't be certain it was definitely him, the probability of it being Tang Inhe, the 1,000 Poison Hand, was currently the highest. But why did Tang Inhe come all the way here to confront Munno? No, it was hard to even consider it a confrontation. From the moment he used the formless poison, it was clear he had desperately tried to kill his opponent. However, it didn't make sense. Why? The Sichuan Tang clan has no reason to hold a grudge against Munno. No matter how much he thought about it, that was the case. Munno's identity known to the world was that of a medicine immortal who was highly respected by all. Unless his hidden identity was revealed. Ah. Li Guang spoke as if he finally understood. The Sichuan Tang clan found out that you are a member of the Fire Faith Order. Otherwise, there would be no reason for them to come and kill him while he was in seclusion. Despite his confident question, Munno remained silent, spending time dispelling the poison and recovering. Swish. Li Guang drew the black sword he had sheathed at his waist. Since he kept avoiding conversation, it seemed he had no choice but to resort to force. However, if he was truly poisoned by the formless poison, approaching him closely should be avoided. Even though he could control his true energy as if breathing after surpassing the barrier, he had to be cautious of the formless poison, known as the King of Poisons, as it followed a different path. Boom. Unleashing his sword energy, Li Guang aimed it at Mun No and spoke. If you continue to keep your mouth shut about what happened, I won't ask any further. However, I must know where you hid that thing from the prophecy. In your current state, unable to even properly dispel the poison, I can easily kill you with mere sword techniques. So speak. Li Guang threatened him, urging him to talk. Then Mun No, who had been silently focusing on circulating his energy, opened his mouth. Haha. You people know nothing. What nonsense are you spouting? Do you think I can't kill you? The order has already been given to end your life if it comes to this. That's not important. But you people must know the truth. You're not making any sense. If you continue like this, the prophecy was wrong. Li Guang, who was about to take action, paused for a moment. What is this old man saying now? The prophecy was wrong? He had already found it strange when he heard the news that Mun No had suddenly disappeared with that thing from the prophecy 17 years ago. What are you talking about? Does this old man know something about the prophecy? If that's the case, he needed to hear him out first. Mun No, if you want to survive, speak clearly. The sacred flame shall be tainted by black evil. Beware the incarnation of Ahriman who will appear in this world. That's right. That prophecy. The moment the holy fire priestess made that prophecy and medicine immortal He Yang Mun No betrayed them and fled 17 years ago, the relationship between the organization and Fire Faith Order had reached a catastrophic point. As a guardian, you were right by her side when she made that prophecy, so why did you do such a thing? Your brothers and sisters paid the price for the sin you committed. That was not my sin. Her interpretation lost its direction. Direction. What does he mean by her interpretation losing direction? Is he referring to the holy fire priestess? As he pondered this, Mun No continued. That is not an incarnation to be wary of as she interpreted it. What nonsense are you? The coins of the western regions have different patterns on the front and back, but whichever side you look at, it is ultimately one. Li Guang clicked his tongue. He couldn't comprehend what Mun No was saying at all. Had he gone mad while living in seclusion all this time? Saying that the incarnation of evil should not be feared? Is this why? Perhaps this old man Mun No had gone insane and become tainted by the incarnation of evil. He may have been so deeply immersed in evil that he turned his back on everyone and fled. The order from above to eliminate medicine immortal Mun No, if he didn't reveal anything, seemed to be because of this. Either way, it seemed unlikely to extract any information from him in this state. You old man seems to have gone completely mad, tainted by evil, but I'll give you a chance for old time's sake. That thing from the prophecy, no, where did you take the incarnation of Ahriman? Even if it's not you, once we capture that old woman holy fire priestess, we'll find out soon enough. At his words, Mun No chuckled. You're laughing. She has lost her qualification. What are you saying? What my words mean? Your great master knows even better. The moment the word master was mentioned, Li Guang's eyes changed. To him, that person was his lord, whom his clan had served for generations, and a being to be worshipped like a god. How dare he bring up that person? Are you, the sinner who stole the incarnation, trying to blaspheme against that person now? It's truly regrettable. Makon, that man, is the one who blinded her eyes and caused all this. Shut up. Swish, swish, swish. Before Mun No could even finish his sentence, unable to contain his anger, Li Guang unleashed a barrage of his most powerful bullet sword techniques along with a shout. Whoosh. Although Mun No couldn't control his body due to the formless poison, he tried to move to avoid the attack. However, it seemed his body was already too damaged to move as he wanted. Swish, swish, swish. The first bullet sword technique he had launched sliced through Mun No's waist as he leaped up, and the following techniques shredded his falling lower body into pieces. Thud, thud, thud. Amidst the severed chunks of flesh that were once his lower body, Mun No fell. Thump. With only his upper body remaining and his organs spilling out, his appearance was utterly gruesome. Although it was already difficult to survive in this state, Li Guang's fury had not subsided, and he attempted to launch another sword technique at the fallen Mun No to finish him off. You brought this upon yourself, old. It was at that very moment. Flinch. What? A tremendous energy was felt, sending a chill down his spine. It was an energy that could instantly put even someone like him who had surpassed the barrier on guard, forcing him to halt his attack. Has Ghost Blade returned? If that's the case, he needs to leave quickly. He had to carry out the task discreetly without Ghost Blade's knowledge. In any case, now that Mun know that old man had been poisoned by the formless poison and lost his lower body, he would definitely not survive. With this in mind, Li Guang didn't hesitate and launched himself in the opposite direction. I did contribute to Mun No's demise in the end, but he was going to die from the formless poison anyway. Squish. Squish. Crunch. As Li Guang was recounting the events as if reminiscing, he couldn't continue his words. The reason was that the air was becoming so heavy with each word he spoke that it was difficult to breathe. But that wasn't the end of it. The ground around him trembled violently and then cracked, and even whoosh. The pouring rain was flowing in reverse. The rain flowing backward turned into water vapor as it evaporated, creating an extremely bizarre sight. Li Guang couldn't bring himself to look at Mok Jiangun's face. He had willingly confessed the events of that day in order to seek his own death, but this had brought about an outcome far worse than he had hoped for. I can't breathe. It was as if the area around him and the bastard had become a vacuum. Just how intense must the killing intent be to materialize to this extent? Irk. As he retched up blood from the agony, Mok Jiangun's voice reached his ears. This wasn't a matter to be settled with just you. What? This bastard's way of speaking suddenly changed. With just a change in his manner of speech, the atmosphere had inexplicably shifted, and as Li Guang raised his head in bewilderment, he saw that Mok Jiangun's eyes had turned as black as obsidian. Chapter 322, Fragments of Truth 4. It was an occurrence brought about by an accumulation of killing intent. Mok Jiangun had possessed a strong killing intent since childhood, to the point where it could be considered a murderous nature. Due to the intensity of this killing intent, his grandfather had advised him to refrain from meeting others. However, this wasn't the case throughout his entire childhood. Mok Jiangun had learned to control this innate killing intent through acquired means. His grandfather had taught him to always imagine his state of mind as a tranquil lake, never allowing it to be stirred by turbulence. He had also instilled in him a sense of propriety, ensuring it permeated his daily life. This had a significant effect. As Mok Jiangun deeply respected the grandfather who had raised him, he eventually reached a point where he unconsciously adhered to those teachings. However, snap. When his rage reached its peak and his unleashed killing intent became uncontrollable, something snapped within Mok Jiangun's mind, no, his heart. It wasn't simply crossing a line deep within his heart. It was as if something he had suppressed was erupting, and at some point, it began to take over his mind and everything else. Those eyes, what the hell? Li Guang couldn't hide his bewilderment at Mok Jiangun's eyes, which had turned as black as obsidian. Just meeting his gaze was enough to overwhelm him with an imposing aura, leaving his mind in a daze. Then Mok Jiangun scoffed and spoke. Thanks to you, I've awakened after a long time, but this situation is troublesome. What? I haven't completely assimilated yet. What are you talking about? Humans are imperfect beings, but they find their path within that imperfection. That's why I held high expectations for their potential and wanted to harmonize with you all. But it seems you often disappoint me, perhaps because you're always faced with a crossroads of binary choices. Li Guang's eyes trembled violently. The confidence and majesty filling his voice made it seem as if he was looking at an emperor. This imposing aura could be described as domination, no, the presence of an absolute being. The moment he felt it, only one thing came to Li Guang's mind. The sacred flame shall be tainted by black evil. Beware the incarnation of Ahriman who will appear in this world. Ahriman. Li Guang spoke in a trembling voice, looking at Mok Jiangun. At those words, Mok Jiangun raised an eyebrow and spoke. Ahriman? Yes, I was called that as well. It was unbelievable. He had thought it was simply a prophecy signifying the birth of a great murderous being who would throw the world into chaos. This monstrous bastard was undoubtedly that incarnation. But, incarnation? Is this an incarnation? Can this even be called an incarnation? No. This is the real thing. Ahriman. As Li Guang became overcome with emotion, Mok Jiangun chuckled and said, Whether you call me Ahriman, Tianzi, a devil or anything else, it doesn't matter. Humans are beings that fixate only on the aspects they want to see anyway. However, swish. As Mok Jiangun extended his hand, Li Guang's body, with only one leg remaining, began to tremble violently. Under the influx of black energy, his body not only shook but also swelled as if it would burst. You were prepared for the consequences when you killed him, weren't you? Kuu. It was too agonizing. It felt as if every drop of blood was suffering. It was a pain he had never experienced before, making him feel like he would die, unable to endure it. Stop. Mok Jiang whispered to the anguished Li Guang. With this level of power, I can not only shred your physical body but also your soul, annihilating it completely. A soul? What do you think it means for a soul to vanish? It means your very existence will be erased regardless of reincarnation or anything else. Shudder. Amidst the pain, Li Guang was gripped by a fear that made him suddenly alert. Do you want to at least keep your soul intact? Then tell me. Where is the one who ordered you to kill him? No one know. To that person, who? Crack, crack, crack. As he spoke, cracks began to appear on his swollen body. As the cracks formed, the sensation wasn't pain but a gradual loss of all feeling. It was as if nothing existed. Seeing this, Mok Jiang grinned eerily and said, "What should I do? It seems best to hurry. Your soul is already being torn apart." It was truly bizarre. He was someone who had stubbornly clung to his loyalty to that person, even prepared to face death. However, when the being before him said his soul would be erased and his existence would vanish, he was overcome with extreme fear and found himself speaking without realizing it. Ghost Blade. Only the deputy leaders of the First Realm can directly contact that person. How can I meet this human called Ghost Blade? Ghost Blade, Kuu. The time is approaching. Ghost Blade will definitely appear if the Heaven and Earth Society leader summons him. Please spare me. I don't want my existence to disappear. All right. I'll do that. Really? At Mok Jiang's words, Li Guang's face lit up despite his agony. Having experienced all sorts of bizarre things while serving that person, he believed in the existence of the soul and reincarnation. Thus, he wanted to avoid having his existence erased at all costs. To him, Mok Jiang smiled and said, "But while I may do that, the right doesn't want it." What? We're still separate entities, you see. Che, that's different from what you promised. What are you talking about? Crack, crack, crack. Li Guang's swollen body crumbled into pieces, scattering like ashes. The only part that remained was his head, but even that cracked and crumbled. The shattered dust seeped into the rainwater pooled on the ground, fading away as if it had never existed in the first place. Looking down at this with an indifferent gaze, Mok Jiang spoke. "If you're awake, get up on your own, old woman." Flinch. At those words, the holy fire priestess, who had been lying face down a short distance away, trembled. Although she had fainted during Li Guang's torture, she had woken up midway and heard their entire conversation. "Armin," he said. "How could this happen?" She couldn't hide her shock. Something that should never have happened had occurred. That prophecy was originally... Whoosh. Hook. At that moment, Holy Fire Priestess's body rose from the ground. Her body, now upright, directly faced Mok Jiang. Seeing the black energy flowing from his entire body and his obsidian-like eyes, she was so shaken that she lost her words. As she stood there, shocked and at a loss, Mok Jiang spoke. "Although you have already strayed from my path, you sure made good use of the mission given to you. How does it feel to have lost the price you paid?" At that question, the Holy Fire Priestess's eyes widened as if they would burst. Others might not understand if they heard it, but she knew what those words meant. "Why, you are. This is me and that is also me. You know that well, old woman." Saying you have already paid the price cannot undo everything. I am not one to forgive." Thud. The moment he finished speaking, the Holy Fire Priestess fell to her knees and prostrated herself on the ground. Then she cried out in a pleading voice to Mok Jiang. "If you say you will punish my sins, I will gladly accept it. But I had no choice. I couldn't lose what I had left. My one and only, She clutched her chest, unable to finish her sentence. Her heart was beating so violently that it felt like needles were stabbing it. It was so painful that even breathing was difficult. As Mok Jiang made a gesture of clenching something with his hand, blood spurted from her mouth. "Pooh!" Coughing up blood, she gasped in agony. "Kuu. I don't give a damn about your pathetic circumstances. Could, please. Because of your foolishness, the right lost something that shouldn't have been lost, and I too had to experience the same pain as back then. Spare. Your words are meaningless. I am no longer a merciful being. So I will erase everything related to the seeds you sowed and that being to whom you wagged your crafty tongue. Crack. It was at that moment. Something shattered within Mok Jaeongun's chest and something revealed itself. It was none other than Chong Ryung. Holy Fire Priestess's eyes, which had been gasping for breath due to the pain in her heart, trembled. The pain had suddenly ceased. Could it be that he was showing mercy? As she raised her head in confusion, she saw Mok Jaeongun staring into empty space, as if looking at nothing. Why was he acting like that? You mortal, no, what the hell are you? Chong Ryung, who had forcibly broken free from the wooden puppet seal, parted her lips as she gazed at Mok Jaeongun, whose eyes had turned as black as obsidian. At her question, the obsidian-like eyes took on a strange look. Chong Ryung's eyes wavered as she watched this. Those eyes. It was the moment she approached him about to say something. Mok Jaeongun's eyes, which had been like obsidian, returned to normal. Then, as if experiencing an extreme headache, he clutched his head with one hand and staggered, his expression contorting. Seeing this, Chong Ryung furrowed her brow and spoke. What are you doing now? Are you all right? At that question, Mok Jaeongun slowly raised his head. As his eyes and expression returned to their usual state, she couldn't hide her bewilderment. Just a moment ago, Mok Jaeongun had definitely become a completely different being. He couldn't even hear her voice from inside the wooden puppet. That's why she had finally intervened, but what the hell was going on? She asked. Is it really you, mortal? At her question, Mok Jaeongun silently nodded. Do you remember what just happened? At that question, Mok Jaeongun held his forehead. Then, with an expression of incomprehension, he communicated via voice transmission. It's strange. What? I clearly had consciousness and memory, but I spoke and moved against my will. You remember? Yes. He remembered clearly. He was aware of what he had said and the situation he was in. He even felt the emotions and feelings with which he had spoken those words. Yet all of this was unrelated to his own will. It felt as if another being within him had shared a single body and carried out everything. What the hell is this? For the first time, Mok Jaeongun had questions about himself. There was definitely another being within him that he hadn't been aware of. But this feeling wasn't uncomfortable or foreign. It felt so natural, as if they had been one from the beginning, making it incomprehensible to him. Then Mok Jaeongun looked at Chong Ryung. What kind of feeling was that? Although it had been unrelated to his will, since the emotions and feelings of that moment had been fully shared, it was difficult to forget the last part. It was close to an indescribable sense of nostalgia.